welcome to another Chat and Learn here with PowerToFly. My name is Mariella, and I'm super excited to jump into this next hour with you. I had a chance to talk offline with our guest speaker today and some of our early joiners who joined the call a little early to get some behind the scenes chatter. And I'm super excited to learn with everyone today. So I'm just gonna hop right into our presentation today by first going over some housekeeping rules. So if this is your first Chat and Learn with PowerToFly, thank you for joining us. And if this is not, thank you for coming back. I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of this chat. I'm going to always invite everyone to come off of mute and to turn their cameras on. Don't worry, I haven't showered today, but I'm here to learn and grow with you all. You put your virtual background, no one's judging you here. So we really want you to maximize your time here. You're taking the time out of your day to join us. So feel free to chime in. I cannot stress enough that your voice is important. So I will remind you later on, don't worry. If you want to keep anything anonymous, feel free to write to me you'll find me under Mariella in the chat box. Feel free to write to me and I'll keep your question or your response anonymous and bring it up to our guest speaker. And then the last thing that I'll say is this is being recorded. So I know that we live in a world where everyone is multitasking all the time. We actually had someone on the treadmill listening. That's okay if you do that kind of multitasking or if you're feeding your baby while listening. But I know that we live in a multitasking world, and in order to really get the nectar of this hour, I really encourage everyone to be present so that we can hear from you and we aren't just speaking at you. So with that said, you can rewatch this video directly after we finish recording, and then you can take notes, and replay things if you need to. The last thing that I'll say is that we would love if you follow PowerToFly on our socials so you can stay updated with the next Chat and Learn series that we have coming up, and then also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you do come off of mute, you will be featured in our live recording, so just so you know. With that said, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Jen. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you come to know about PowerToFly and what you're excited to share with us today?
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. I came across PowerToFly earlier this year, actually. I think a recruiter from PowerToFly had reached out to me about an opportunity. And when I got to chatting with her and heard a little bit more about PowerToFly and the unique company that you guys are in terms of recruiting talent, but also creating a network, specifically for women, and being able to bring those diverse voices to the table, I thought it was so exciting. I immediately started following PowerToFly, joined the community, and offered up, any chance I could to speak to others. And so this is kind of how this conversation came about. First of all, let me just say, I love talking to other people and connecting. I think that's the way the world works. Whether your life, and so to make this a very open dialogue as we go, please interrupt me, please ask questions, please offer your own insights, because every time we do this, and I've had these types of conversations a few times over the years, it's really great to hear other people's perspectives. So a little bit about me. I've been a lifelong technologist. I was an electrical engineer out of college back in the 90s, and out of school, went to work for Accenture, learned a lot because they kind of throw you in different situations. From there, I kind of ended up in financial services, and I basically went from being sort of a developer and a coder into a technical lead, and eventually found my passion, which was project management. And moved through Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, sort of all in various levels of project management, leading all of our digital platforms at Merrill Lynch, and focusing in on really project delivery. I moved to TIA in 2015. Actually, I've been there for about 5 years, and I've had various positions, PMO, Chief Administrative Officer, which is kind of what I'm doing now for our Tech and Ops division, which is about half the size of TIA. But what I want to talk about a little bit here and focus in on is some of the work I did when I was the COO for our digital division, because I think that's where I really found my passion for being nimble and having that quest that, we don't need to be perfect. We just need to show progress, and being able to make quick decisions, evaluate and pivot is something I've kept with me since then. So with that being said, that's kind of a little bit of background about me. As Mariella said, I'm in New Jersey, and I have two daughters. One is 5 and one is 16. So they've got a big age gap, but they keep me busy. For anybody that has a family, I know it's tough during these times, but just being able to, again, practice quick decision making and be nimble, because from hour to minute to the second, everything can change.
Absolutely. And I know we've got some working parents here on the call with us, so feel free to chime in with anything that resonates with you as well, or any tips and tricks to get us through these crazy times. Great. So before we jump into our round of questions here, let's walk through these beautiful introductory slides that you've put here. Why don't you take it over, Jen?
Sure. So I wanted to kind of dig in on two things, just to set the tone for this chat. And before we get into the questions, what I've learned over the past, and again, like I said, this is sort of recent learning over the last 5 years, is about that value of being able to quickly pivot, be nimble in your decision making, and probably most important, learning that failure is part of the process. Like, no one is ever going to succeed if they don't fail a few times first, because failure is where the learning comes from. And it's where you can test your hypotheses and see what the next step should be. So I wanted to talk about this concept in sort of two dimensions. One is what this looks like when you're leading a team or part of a team. And the other is what it looks when you're thinking about a next position, a next opportunity. And I'm going to try to keep this pretty quick and not go into a lot of details, because I think when we get through the questions, some of that will come through. But just to kind of briefly set the stage, when you think about this for your teams, one of the things that was interesting about the digital COO role I had was when I came to TIA, it was to be the COO for a technology division, right? It was all technologists, developers, QA analysts, production support, DevOps, those type of folks. And right when I joined, TIA made a decision that they wanted to be more digital and create an actual digital business and be able to take some of our products and services, package them into advice, and create a digital advisor. So it was a super interesting time, because now all of a sudden we had to create a digital business. So we took our team of technologists, we had about 2,000 at the time, and we said, man, we have to be able to think about this, in terms of creating goals, creating a business plan, determining our financials and how we're actually going to turn this into something that not only makes money, but is what our clients and customers want. And so that's when we really said, like, hey, we need to hire some number of business people and create sort of that side of the organization. But we have 2,000 people here that work on our applications and interact with the products that we use every day. And they know a lot of what we need to do to be successful and to reach the right market. And so we created something that's, stayed with me now for 5 years, which is a concept called the Tiger Team. And what we really did was we said, hey, we've got a number of problems we need to solve. We need to rally people that are passionate about the topic. We specifically want to enable folks that are maybe more junior, that don't traditionally have decision-making power. And we want to enable them to get together and really think about themselves as a crew and rally around that common goal. Once we have that team together, and I'll give you an example, maybe it's a team that's really passionate about increasing e-delivery. So once they kind of have their mission, then we said, hey, we want you guys to sit down and really kind of look at the data that we have about e-delivery. Who's got e-delivery? Who's signing up for it? What are their demographics? When did they sign up? Do they have e-delivery for every piece of paper or only some? Use that data to be able to develop a hypothesis. Listen to others on your crew. Everybody's going to have a different opinion. But, since you guys are in this together, figure out a way to identify 1 or 2 hypotheses that you can quickly test, right? And then what we did is we said, hey, you guys, you've looked at your data, you have a hypothesis, you have a passion around this subject. Now we want to empower you to start. And that just means go. Now, I'm going to talk about this concept a lot in this conversation because, making quick pivots and nimble decisions is all about just starting. You have to just start. You cannot plan, a journey of 18 months and know exactly what every step is going to be. So you have to just start. And what we did was we time boxed the teams to a 6-week cycle, if you will. And cycle 1 was identify the hypotheses and build a short plan. Then it's sort of 4 weeks to build, execute, release whatever is going to be built. And in some cases, it was documents. And in some cases, it was code that went into production. And then 1 week to sort of wrap it up and look at what they accomplished, be able to analyze their progress and be able to pivot or course correct if need be. And we would then bring folks in and make sure that at the end of that 6 weeks, we celebrated loudly whatever they accomplished. It could be that they tried something and it really didn't work. That's all right. What did you learn from it? And we had senior leadership in there, cheering and saying thank you and clapping and patting people on the back. Again, no matter if it was a success, a failure, or maybe it was too soon to tell, but the journey is the thing that needs to be celebrated. And that's the mentality we were trying to create within this, sort of brand new digital organization. And once you're done with that, it's sort of a rinse and repeat, because based on your progress, you might find, oh, you know what, we really didn't have anybody from the user experience team as part of our crew, and we need to reach out and get someone, right? So you might have to reevaluate your crew. You might have to develop a new hypothesis. And it's that cycle of just being vulnerable with people, finding people that are passionate, finding those friends, those colleagues, even those people, I think, that disagree with you or think differently than you. That is especially important as well. And through that, when you're a true team and you're rallied around a common mission and you're putting processes and procedures in place to be able to allow you to pivot quickly, make those nimble decisions, and again, cheer no matter if it's a failure or a success. It's really powerful when you see it in action. The folks that have participated in that at TIA have loved it. And, I use that quite a bit on teams that I manage or run as we go forward, because it really makes people, especially, again, those that might not be in a position of decision making, it makes them feel empowered. It makes them feel like they have a voice and that they can do something and set a course that is going to help the company, our customers, and our employees succeed. So that's kind of the gist of how this might work for a team. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, how does nimble decision making, quick pivots, and embracing failure work for you as an individual? And I think the best sort of example to use is when you're seeking out a new position, a new opportunity, a new job. What I find often, and I'm going to sort of talk a little bit to the women in the group here, is that especially for women, but it's true for men as well, is a lot of times we look at that next opportunity that's presented to us, or maybe it isn't even presented. We don't even know it's an opportunity, but we immediately think, well, I haven't done that. I don't have that experience. I can't possibly do that. And what I want to instill in you guys is when you think about, again, nimble decisions and especially embracing failure and being vulnerable, you have to think through where you've been so far in your career, right? All of us have started somewhere. And if I think back over the 20 plus years of my career, and I'm honest with myself, I can honestly say that there was very few times when I knew exactly what to do and exactly what the results would be. Almost every single time that a challenge was brought to me, I thought to myself first, oh, how am I going to do this? But guess what? We always got through it. And how did we do that? How did I do that? How did you all do that? Because everyone's done it. You did it by working with your colleagues, by building relationships, by thinking through ideas and trying to figure out pros and cons. Every one of those experiences at least in my experience, is valuable and is a way to think about your next opportunity. Because if you're going into a job, or you're applying for a job, or you're talking with somebody about an opportunity to, take on a new project, you don't want to know exactly what it is that you're going to be doing, because then it's not actually an opportunity for growth. So I think recognizing and valuing your experience is really important. And then the other thing I think, and I feel like I've made a career of this, for those of you that are on the phone that might be part of my team or have worked with me in the past, I'm a big question asker. And I think there's a way to do it where you are asking the right questions that are kind of probing, right? I'm a big believer that no question is a dumb question, but sometimes you have to ask the obvious question. And what I found is a lot of times when you ask it, other people in the meeting, in the room, will say, yeah, I didn't understand that either. Why is it that we can't do it this way? Why did that fail before? And what do we need to do to move forward? So what I find is, I think it's all right to sort of admit where you don't have the experience, to ask questions that will allow you to bridge, have something you have, or get one of your other colleagues to be able to speak and offer their insight when they might by it. And I think being able to ask those thoughtful, probing questions is really important, because the other thing it does is it shows your engagement. It shows that you're listening. It shows that you believe there's value in the other people that are on the team with you. If you're in an interview situation, it shows that you're interested and passionate about the opportunity in front of you, and that you want to underscore enough how questions are, especially might seem like asking that question shows that you aren't sure what the answer is, or makes you vulnerable. Those are especially important questions, because again, they show that engagement and the fact that you really want to understand that particular opportunity. I think it's also, when you're in an interview or when you're thinking about a job, to be able to that line item on a job description that you haven't done before, and relate it back to something that you have done, and think about how the skills that you developed in that prior situation they're basically skills and techniques that you can use in any other future experience. So like digging into your toolkit and saying, well, I haven't done that specific thing before, but here's how I think I would do it based on this other experience, right? I would tap into some experts on the team. I would create a list of advantages and disadvantages. I would, do a little research and talk to such and such mentor, and then, gather the feedback from the team, and we'd be able to set a direction, right? So you don't have to be the one that knows everything. You have to be able to use your network, your relationships, and your experiences to be able to get over that next hurdle that's in front of you. And then the last thing I'll say is, and this is kind of like my mantra these days, is you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think especially as females in the workforce, anybody that's in IT, there's a lot of pressure put on folks to be highly confident, to be experts in a particular subject, to know everything, and to always have an answer. While I think that is important, right? I don't think you want to go into a job interview and just, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. But you have to be able to identify sort of when you're feeling uncomfortable, it's because you're passionate about something, it's an opportunity for growth, and being able to find that balance of the confidence from your prior experiences married with maybe the uncomfortable feeling you have about this new position, being able to and really bring that prior confidence into that future position. I opportunity for you. So for me, when I'm looking for new positions, and like I said, I've moved 4 or 5 times over the years. I try to find the ones where they kind of scare me a little bit, because that means it's going to be something new that I've never done. I'm going to learn something more about myself and how I get through situations. And it's going to make me a better employee, a better person. It's going to enable my career to really grow. And that for me is where it's at. If I'm coming into the office every day and I'm just like, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. Yeah, I'm done. Like, I get so bored, and I think it's an easy way to get stagnant. So hopefully that's just a little bit to set the tone before we get into the questions. But that's for me why it's important to sort of be nimble, be open to opportunities, to think through failures in a way that turns them into successes, and really, just be able to sort of just think through each experience you have on its own for what you are able to gain out of it.
Wow, thank you so much, Jen, for that. I feel like you've already dropped so much knowledge in just these first 2 slides. And I love that what I'm hearing the most, and I love when people who are working in the field of technology bring this up as a highlight, is to look at with a holistic perspective and not just focus on linear thinking, the yes or the no. It's collaborating and putting all of the different ways that we have the perspectives and the backgrounds, and playing around, experimenting, and knowing that you don't have all the answers. I think it's so beautiful to see this transition. I know it's not happening on a global level yet, and we definitely have a lot of work to do, but just like taking the pressure off of ourselves, and not thinking that we have to know everything. It's impossible. It's impossible. That's right. I know we've got some questions about perfectionism later, but tossing in the hat, this empathy card, and this emotional intelligence card, and this collaborative card that really opens up, actually makes a better product, and it takes the weight off of the one person that is supposed to know everything. So thank you so much for highlighting that, Jen. With that said, I just want to really dive into these sets of questions that you all have submitted offline. So you all have submitted some beautiful questions offline. We are going to take these questions one by one. And if you see your question pop up on the screen, feel free to take yourself off of mute. If this is not your question that pops on the screen and you want to say something, you want to kind of reveal a dream that you just had during your nap time or last night, I can't say enough. I want to hear from you. I see you laughing, Heather. Thanks for turning your camera on as well. So, with that said, we are calling from a pretty, diverse map, as we can say. I'm in Argentina. We've got someone else calling from Argentina. Our guest speaker is in New Jersey. We've got New York on the line as well as New Jersey. So if you're just joining us, let us know where you're calling from. We've got London on the line as well. Sean, I see you. So let us know where you're calling from in the chat box, so that we can see the power of digital community. And Jen, I'm also super interested. I know you did a shout out to the 90s. You said when you first started getting it, and just like within the past, 5 years, so many things have changed. So I'm really curious to see how you have been able to use this to your advantage as far as being flexible and being open to work with the changes and to evolve with technology as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's move into this first question here. So how did you transition into this mindset, and what part of the transition did you struggle with most?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, there's 2 keys here. One is talked about the team. It feels a little weird and sort of hokey when you're on a team and you're constantly like cheering people on. Like, that's not a traditional thing that people really do too much in business or especially in IT. And so I think at first it felt really hokey to be saying to folks like, oh, you moved the needle by 0.1% on e-delivery, or you know what, e-delivery didn't even grow, but guess what? That's awesome. And like, it's so weird doing that. But what I found is the more that you did it, the more that people responded to it. And if you think about it, if you're in a competition and you're I don't know, let's just say you're in a crew race. That's big with me now because I got a rowing machine, so I'm all about crew. But let's say you're in a crew race and everybody on the shores is like, you can't do it, I hope you lose. You're never gonna go anywhere. People on the sidelines are like, that's keep trying, you can do it. All of a sudden you're lifted up and you can go places that you didn't even think you could go. So I think that power to really, whether you're a manager of someone, a colleague of someone, a teammate, even somebody who's more senior than you in the organization, patting them on the back, cheering them on, it's so important because that's going to be what helps with that ability to feel like you can put yourself out there. And if your suggestion or your idea fails, it's okay. You have to feel that support and that true power of being, part of a team that is banded together and has your back. And then I think the other thing in terms of the transition for myself personally, and again, for folks on the phone that might know me, I'm pretty direct and I have a lot of opinions. Just because I'm saying that, I often feel unconfident and in my past, I haven't wanted to fail. That doesn't mean that I don't have opinions and thoughts and ideas and oftentimes think that I'm right. So for me, it's a balance of trying to find the right times to insert an idea, an opinion without steamrolling the conversation. And so I just try to remember to ask as many questions as statements I make, and to always not only just be open to others' opinions, but actively seek out opinions, right? So in a meeting, I might say, hey, I think we should do this, but what do you guys think? Can you vibe off what I just said? And can we come up with something that's even better? And just be able to really show that even though I have a thought or opinion, or I might have a viewpoint, it's all right. And, I'm willing to compromise, to bend, to do something completely different. I just want to get the ball started.
Awesome. And I've got a private message here. Have you noticed that these changes have influenced other people to think more like this?
Yes. I can honestly say that the more that I congratulate and cheer people on, the more that I find that I see others emulating that behavior. And the more that I try to involve others in the conversation, but also still, offer up my thoughts and suggestions, the more that I see people coming out of their shells and being like, hey, I had an idea, like, what if we did this? And because of that, you end up in a place where all of a sudden you're up the mountain that you didn't even know you needed to climb, right? And that's why, another thing I'll talk about at some point is it's not about the destination. You can't know where you're going. It's about the path and the journey. And I think that's where the team comes along. It's like your family. Like if I think I'm driving to Arizona, but I end up in Texas, that's okay. As long as my family is with me, we're all in the same car and we decided to do that together. And there's a reason why we changed, right? Because we found out something new. We realized there was a better opportunity, right? So for me, the journey and the path is so more important than the destination. And that's, again, something that's changed in me over the last 5 years, is to really value those steps and that progress.
I love that. And it also makes you think of it in a different way. You're not just going to step on people to get to the point that maybe you get to, or maybe you don't. And then you end up with a bunch of ruined relationships. You are actually forming a part. I love that teamwork is something that you're highlighting as well. And authentic teamwork sounds like you're speaking about as well. So thank you for that, Jen. All right, so let's move on to this next question here. Again, if you see your question come up on the screen, we'd love to hear from you. Or if this is not your question, I know that we've got some folks who work with you, Jen, too. So I would love to hear if they want to echo anything that you're saying or add some more tips and tricks. So feel free to do that, y'all. All right, so let's move on to this question here. What are the top 3 things you've learned from becoming more nimble and being able to pivot often and easily?
Yeah. So one of them is the thing I literally just said, which is the path is the destination is unknown and it's all about the path. But I think within that, at least for me, it's instilled a couple of things. One is that if you can change things up and not be in a rut and set on a given path and a journey that ends in a place that it's way more fun. like, going through that change and every day coming in and trying to figure out what's new and how to pivot, it makes, work, it makes life more exciting. And so I think that's one thing, is really sort of embracing those mini changes and being able to see the fun and excitement in them. I think being flexible is another big thing. And if you think about it, we all do that in our daily lives. Like, you probably didn't get up today, Mariella, and know exactly what you were going to do every minute of the day. You thought you had a plan, but probably something changed. Nicole, you've got a 2-year-old. I'm sure your day is not going exactly as you thought it would, but you're flexible, you make those quick decisions, and then you pivot. So bringing that to your work life, I think, is so critical, and really understanding too that success is no longer, to me, getting to the top of the mountain. Success is the journey and the growth that you have along the way, and realizing that the experiences and that foundation that you're building, that's success. Success is not, oh, I want to be the president and I got to be the president. Success is, hey, I went on this journey to learn this and to try this and to experiment with this and to build these relationships. That's really, to me, what success is. And I think that's a big change, especially for a project manager like myself, who used to believe that you could know exactly where you're going and you could have a 4,000 line project plan that told you exactly how to get there. That's just not possible anymore. And it's boring if you try to do it that way.
I love that you highlight fun. And I'd love to also hear your opinion on, when you, obviously a plan is good, and to have, a skeletal structure and then being able to flesh that out is great. But can you talk about some of how that leads to these kind of magical moments that may not have happened had you had stuck to the plan, in a very strict way?
Yeah, absolutely. At least for me, I think, if you think about, I think this is one of the questions coming up, but, a lot of people say, how do you, how are you nimble and sort of make quick decisions when you have a customer or a client as part of it? And my thought there is, and this is true, I think, of a client, a customer, a stakeholder of yours, a manager, somebody that's asking you to do something. A lot of times, if you really kind of peel it back, it's not about the specific thing, right? Customers don't know that we want to build a better account opening process, but they want to know that what our company stands for, the brand we have, the mission and the vision we have, and what it is that we want to offer in the marketplace at a high level. So they want to really be able to know our intent, the type of company we want to be. And I think that's true of an individual. Like, when I go into an interview, I want to make sure people know the type of person I'll be at work and the things that are important to me, and why I feel like that company is a good fit. It's less about the skills that I bring, or the specific product we build for a customer. It's much more about that intent and that mission. And so, at least for me, I think that's part of how I try to look at things, is share the intent, solicit feedback, and, we're going to come up with something in harmony that's different probably than what we thought it would be. And likely 99% of the time is probably going to be better than we thought it would be.
I love that. I love that you're highlighting that. And I see Nicole smiling. Did you want to comment on anything?
Yes, I just really love this presentation and this chat and learn, because I think you're touching on a lot of really important topics. And, one thing I remember reading or I saw in a TED Talk was about strategy and how much time we spend on strategy sometimes and how we get lost in that. And I know when we had our initial conversation, this is exactly what we talked about. And so I wanted to ask you how much time you devote usually to strategy. If you could put it in a percentage, strategy versus action, what's your typical go-to, if you can quantify it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to answer that question, I think strategy, I don't want you guys to think that strategy is not important to me, and, sort of for this mindset that I'm appealing to you guys about. Strategy is important. You have, again, like I said, you have to have that high level understanding, sort of your North Stars of the things that you think are important to your customer, what you want to be known for. You might, if you're on a project team, you might know, I have to build this account open, a better account opening. And I think it's important to have a rough idea of who you need to be part of that journey with you, where you're going to face obstacles, and sort of a high level sort of vision of what you think success will look like, right? But that won't be, it's going to be exactly this number of screens and this many widgets and XYZ. No, it's this is so much easier, and our customer sat will go up by X. You got to leave the how and a good chunk of the what open. And so I like to really make sure that we're time boxing the strategy piece, to a small amount of the journey. If the journey is going to be, I don't know, 100%, I wouldn't want to spend more than 10% upfront, really thinking through, again, not the detailed journey and path, but those high level things that are going to allow you to make progress every day. Like, to me, the progress is important. We'll talk about decision making, projects, initiatives, transformations. A lot of times they get jammed up because you can't get the decision made that needs to be made. So I think having a framework for how the team is going to make decisions, and who they might need decisions from and how they're going to get those is also really critical to making that sort of quick and efficient progress. And when you think about it, who wants to be part of a team where every other day there's some big decision that has to be made and you're waiting around for some executive who doesn't even know anything about the project to make some earth-shattering decision? Nobody wants to be part of that. They want to come to work every day and add value and show progress. They want to know, like, I came in at 8, I did XYZ, and I got this many lines of code written, or I, put together this presentation, or I was able to have these 5 meetings and get this alignment with somebody, right? So having a way to ensure that the team is going to have the least friction possible, I think that's part of the strategy, right? And setting up that framework that's going to allow the team to be successful and make that important progress.
I really love how you're reframing the way to look at
that answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that how you're reframing this way of looking at success. Obviously, not just limiting it to a place, but considering the journey and considering progress being success and not
That's
just
right.
the arrival and now what.
Right.
I also love that. I'd love to hear, because I love that you're saying, be open to different mindsets and different changes that might occur that kind of add these sweet spots. I'd love to hear your opinion about emotional intelligence and empathy, especially in the world of technology. And when you're speaking of like teamwork, and you're speaking earlier, you spoke specifically to women. And there's been tons of research that show all of the different things that when you add more women to a team, these are the possibilities that can happen. But I also want to include our men on the call here. We had some guys call yesterday, and a really beautiful question that a guy joined, and he was actually the manager or previous manager of the woman who was speaking. And something that he asked was, how can a man who calls himself pretty progressive continue to help with this evolution? So I'd love for you to kind of approach that whole question if you can.
Okay, that's definitely a loaded one. I don't know if I have every answer there, but I will say that I think it is way more important than it used to be to bring your whole self to work, right? When I started back in the 90s, as I said, you would never think of giving anyone a hug at work. You would always just shake their hands, and you wouldn't maybe even talk too much about the personal side of your life. Now I think it's very important to bring your whole self. and to recognize that the people you work with every day, in some cases, you spend more time with them than your family. And just like when you're working and dealing with your family, you're looking at their eyes, you're looking at their body language, you're thinking about the words that are coming out of their mouth. You have to be able to do that at work and really be able to understand where people aren't with you or where people are actively opposing you. And at least for me, I think one of the things that I try to do to get not just the women on my team to be able to bring that more to the table, but to the men as well, is we have to be able to really like encourage each other and make people feel part of the family. So I often start meetings with stories about my day, what happened with my kids in the morning, or what I did over the weekend, because I think you have to feel like you're in it together. And again, that allows for that vulnerability that then I think allows people to really think about things from an empathetic standpoint. And you all of a sudden, instead of somebody that you're working with being just like a cog in a machine, right? And an input and an output, all of a sudden it becomes a family member, a friend. You care about that person. You care how they're feeling. If you're in a meeting with them and you get a sense that something's not right, it makes you want to follow up after and say, hey, you seemed a little off. Why is that? Oh, you don't think we're going in the right direction. Let's talk that through. So at least for me, I think that's probably one of the most important things about, developing your career, developing your skill set, is being able to bring that to the table, because it makes people want to be around you. It makes people want to follow you. It allows you to lead, and it allows you to get that growth and be on that journey that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Beautiful response, Jen. I appreciate that. I know I threw in a deep question there.
That was a good one.
All right, so let's move on to this next question here. Again, if this was your question, I know that a lot of you are pondering all of this juicy information that Jen is sharing with us. It's a lot, but please feel free to write in the chat box anytime. We've got some people commenting here, agreeing with you about success being a journey and embracing failure, adapting quickly with change, and also that strategy should be direction. For example, going east or west, not really MapQuest to the end point.
Right.
So yes, we're with you.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to this next question. So how to show up being confident when you don't know what you're in for?
Yeah, I think that's a big one. And I'll even relate it to this about conversation. I was related and then went dormant for a while, and I started to be like, what am I going to talk about? Right. I mean, I think everybody naturally does that. You could be Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or whoever. And I think there's plenty of times where you don't feel confident. You don't know, but you move forward anyway, because again, growth comes from the journey, and growth comes from picking things that you're passionate about. In this example, I'm talking about something I'm really passionate about. I talk about this to people all day long, in one-on-ones, what I have with them, on team meetings, about how we can sort of be a better team and learn and grow. So I have a lot of passion. If you're talking and doing something that you have passion for, you're going to gain that confidence, even if you feel not so confident going into it. So for me, I think that's really important, is making sure that whatever you're doing, it's something that you have passion about. But the other thing is something I talked about a little bit at the beginning, which is looking back at your foundation of experience and being able to tie something that you're about to take on that you're not confident about back to something that you did in the past that you succeeded in, or even something that you failed in, because now this is a second try, right? So I think, thinking about your experience, your background as a toolkit that you can dip into and pull out what you need for any scenario, even if it's one you haven't ever taken on before. You're going to get through it just like you did for all those prior experiences when you weren't confident. So at least for me, I think that's sort of how you still present confidence, even when you're not.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I just want to let everyone know we've got about 15 minutes left. So if you have not had your chance to shine, you've got 15 minutes left to hop off of mute or write in the chat box. And in the meantime, we'll go on to this next question here. So how do you balance between asking too many questions, asking for help, and coming across as inexperienced, and yet still coming across as a strong, confident leader that people should trust in following?
Yeah, I should ask this question to some of the folks that are on the phone that are part of my teams. But for me, I think it's twofold. It's when you come into a situation, say you're a new manager to a team, or you're anointed as some sort of a lead on a project. You sort of have to start out by asking questions that are, again, going to get to sort of more of that strategy that I talked about. Like, what do we think success looks like? How are we going to know that we're making progress in the right direction? If we fail, or we sense that we're failing, how are we going to come together and course correct? So I think you want to ask those probing questions that are more open-ended, not necessarily the ones that are like, well, why would we do this? Or why did we do that? I don't know. Like, you want to kind of keep them a little bit more probing and elicit people's real insight and thoughts. And I think then, as you're gaining that information and you're reading the room and you're using your empathy to sort of see how people are feeling, and then as a leader, that's how you gain the confidence to be able to pull all those pieces together and make something strategic out of it, right? So for me, one of the things I've done in the past, just using a recent example to kind of bring this home, is, part of my job is to run sort of a reporting team that does all of our core business management for tech and ops. And the team, I think in the past, was really just a team of order takers. Hey, we need to build this report. We need to find a way to show this data. We need to go gather this data, and we need to go out and tell people about it and check their names off lists if they did or didn't do something. And over the past couple of years, we really said, like, this is not the team we want to be. Now, I might have been the one that stood up and said, we need to be something different. But then I pulled the right people together and we said, what do we want to be? Like, we kind of all know we don't want to be what we are now. What can we be that still accomplishes our requirements? Because there's certain things we have to do, but does them in a different way, where all of a sudden we're bringing real value and insight and the power of our collective experience to the table. And we built our mission and our vision for the team together. I didn't come in and just say, this is what we're going to be and this is how we're going to do it. It was the collective thinking, and we all were sort of open-minded to see how that was all going to come together and create a new mission and vision for the team. So I think, leading is being able to pull that together and solicit and dig out of people their ideas and their thoughts, and then putting that together in a cohesive package that then you can be really confident in talking about it, in eulogizing about it, in getting up on your soapbox and talking about and repeating ad nauseum, so that the team knows you've got it, you're leading them, you're confident, and through that they can be confident. So that's, I guess, how I would think through it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give Jen a chance to drink some water. I'm going to drink some water as well, and leave it up for you all to come off of mute and fire away with some questions.
Please.
We'll do like a light pause
Not a
and drink water.
Even an agreement or a disagreement with something I'm saying would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. So feel free to use this time to come off mute, everyone. Don't be afraid. Heather, I see you smiling. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I've really enjoyed what you've had to say. I have a lot of friends who are in the tech world and have changed careers recently. And it is about, taking those risks and finding your place in a new place. I've been a teacher for a long time, and now I'm having to reevaluate everything. I'm already online teaching, but I'm looking, for other things. As I've been the one teaching, and now I have to actually go out there and do something myself.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm sure there's plenty of days where you're like, oh, how am I going to do this? What will I do? What does the future hold? But again, if you just think back through what you've already accomplished and the journey you've been on, I feel like that's going to lift you up. And one of the other things I was going to say is, I think all of us, whether we realize it or not, we have a squad. We have a core group of like confidants that we talk with. It could be our friends, it could be our spouses, it could be our siblings, could even be sons and daughters. It could be, and I like to use this word like frenemy. It could be somebody that you worked with in the past that is very different from you, and you often might even butt heads a little bit. Some vulnerable with that person and say, I need help, or I use your advice, lead experience to really big things, because a lot of times they might have a whole different insight about you and think about something that you wouldn't even realize that you could do or might do. So I would encourage you too to sort of think who through some of those people are, and if you haven't already spoken to them, do so. And especially, like I said, those frenemies, because they're often going to be the ones that might be the most honest with you and might point you in a direction that you never thought possible.
And that seems to highlight the part where you were saying get comfortable with being uncomfortable, having to reignite a relationship with a frenemy. And I agree, they probably will be a little more direct. And I think that now, especially, the ground is pretty leveled as far as, if anyone is being a jerk right now during these times, it's like, well, you just learned from asking them a very vulnerable question that, you really need to X them off your list. So I hope that people are being more vulnerable these days so that more connections can be formed. So thank you, Heather, for chiming in there.
Thank you.
And, and good luck. And actually, Jen, what you mentioned earlier, someone on a recent Chat and Learn mentioned creating a roster and kind of just going like, who have I worked with before? Neighbors, friends, frenemies, like you said, and just kind of going through that list to see how you can make connections. I know that social media is pretty terrifying these days because everyone is on it, and there's so many ways you can network, and even the word networking freaks us out. So just like unplug and just go old school, handwrite your roster sheet, and see what those people have to say as far as giving encouragement or helping guide you. I love that you're highlighting that, Jen.
No, I totally agree. I think that's so important to like sort of catalog your network and to even think of the most unlikely of people, right? If you're a teacher like yourself, Heather, but when you think through sort of your network of people, maybe there's somebody that is, in HR at a company or whatnot. It's like all of a sudden you realize that those can be connections too, and they might open different doors than you ever thought. I mean, the way that I came to TIA as an example, like I said, prior to that, I was all 100% like project delivery, project manager, working with, strong technical teams and being in the thick of it. And when I came to TIA to be a COO, I mean, I was scared shitless. My first thought when the opportunity came across was, how am I ever I don't have the ability to do this. And the reason why I was able to is because the person that was doing the hiring was somebody from my network who needed somebody to do this particular job, thought of me and supported me through it, and made me realize that, I did have actually the skills and the experience to be able to take this on. And so I think, again, like the power of the network and the power of those connections, and even just opening up and talking to people and saying, hey, what if you were me, like, what would you be doing next? What would be like, what's an option for another career path for me? Where could I take it in the future? Having those open-ended conversations are super enlightening, because again, what you think your destination might be could totally change just by talking to other people and realizing that there's more that you can do that you don't even realize.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Jen. I have another message here in the chat box that I'm also interested to hear what you have to say about this. So he says, this is an awesome discussion and thank you. Can you please shed light more around how to navigate through and with Generation Zers? Our leadership constantly needs to evolve.
What, can you just repeat the question? Generation what? I missed that word right after.
With Generation Z, Generation
Oh,
Zers.
Z, okay. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that we need to listen more to those folks. You know, at the company I work at, we have folks that join right out of school. And I actually participated in a panel discussion. I think it was very early this year before COVID. And it was 600 high school girls. And there was 4 or 5 women on a panel talking to high school girls about careers and, you know, various careers in multiple industries and what they could be doing now as they're going into high school and thinking about what their next steps are. And I have to tell you, I was so impressed. Some of these girls had zero fear. They came up and asked all sorts of questions. They raised their hands. They had opinions. They wanted their pictures taken. They gave you their, you know, contact information. And I just think back to, again, when I was a high school kid, I never would have had the confidence to do that. But I think that generation, they've grown up in a way where they sort of have more confidence already that they can accomplish things. And they have that nimble thinking mindset. You know, I've worked with a number of technical associates or interns who are like, well, why do we do it that way? Why couldn't we just do this? Like, oh, you put this in a spreadsheet and send it out to people. Why couldn't we just build like a quick survey? Right. It's just, they aren't shackled in the way of thinking that some of us from, you know, an older generation are. And so I think listening to them and making those folks part of your network is also extremely important, and having those voices on your team. I think that's so critical.
I love that. And Heather wrote in the chat box, that is what Generation Z is all about. Let them get involved. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always floored when I hear what they think as well, those who are putting themselves on social media and speaking about some of these really big topics like climate change and, you know, racism and things like that. And I'm like, yes, go get the mic. You deserve to be heard.
That's right.
So it's very inspiring. And also it's again, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, having listened to a Generation Z student or worker who might, you know, be able to come up with something like that, and and being okay with not having all of the answers. I love how that question is actually rounding everything that you're speaking about.
That's right. And you have to be vulnerable, because as somebody who's got, you know, 25 plus years of experience, and here's somebody out of school going, why don't we just do this? And you're like, how do they know? I wouldn't have thought. It's like being able to say, like, I don't have that experience. I wouldn't be able to know, but your idea is great. I trust it. Let's move forward. That is so important, because again, we don't know everything. Us as individuals, we can only know like 1, you know, millionth of a % of what's out there to know. And so you gotta, no matter who's giving you the advice or the idea, whether it's somebody who's 30 years your senior or 30 years your junior, it's all good. You got to be able to pull that together and use it to make the right decision, right? And be nimble. That's what this is all about.
I love it, Jen. So this hour has flown by. We're actually at time. So I would love to hear any food for thought that you'd like for us to, you know, chew on after we end this chat, something that can encourage us to continue to evolve. And then let us know how we can connect with you or find and support the work that you're doing. And we will end this hour-long chat. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as well. Jen, take it away.
Okay, thank you. You know, like I said, I just want to thank everybody for their time today and for listening. If you do want to talk with me in person or send an email, I'm on LinkedIn under Jennifer Tsalis. You know, for me to sum it up, I would just ask you guys take away this idea of just starting something, right? Just do it. It's like Nike said, just get out there and try. You know, I have a 5-year-old daughter, so we still do a lot of reading to her before bedtime. And one of my favorite books that I read to her often is called Rosie Revere, I think the engineer, and it's about Rosie Revere and how she always was laughed at by her uncles or her friends when she tried to build some crazy invention, and she got to the point where she just stopped trying. And to me, that's the worst thing that could ever happen to you. You know, trying is necessary to get to success, and trying brings growth. So, you know, having that true growth mindset, I think takes you places you never thought you could go. So, you know, write that down on your laptop, right? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Um, I think are the things you are every day. Not, do I have this specific skill, or, you know, how can I get to be the CEO? Just think about the journey and recognize that growth and success are one and the same, and they're part of the journey. Thank you guys for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. I learned a lot from you today, and I know that our live callers did as well. We've got folks writing thank you in the chat box. So continue on with your journeys, everyone. I hope to see you on the next Chat and Learn. And thank you again, Jen, for speaking with us today.
Awesome.